Mr. Bison Flips! Mr. Bison Flips! Mr. Bison Flips! Mr. Bison Flips!
Welcome back to this series on essay writing and this second video on how to write effective conclusions. This is to continue and to supplement the ideas on how to write effective introductions that I presented last week. So you'll find similar sort of skills, and the target audience here is similar as well. I'm aiming to help students who maybe struggle with the basics of essay writing and who feel they need a bit of extra help just to make sure that their conclusions include all the relevant elements and that the structure and the thinking in the conclusion is effective and to the point. So let's get started. So like the previous video, I want to start with a list of do's and don'ts here. So when you look at your conclusion, a couple of things that it must do is restating your main argument without restating your main argument. And that smiley face has unfortunately turned into a J. But what I mean by that is you should say the same thing, but not using exactly the same words. And we'll look at that skill a little bit in the next couple of slides. And it also has to match your introduction in terms of the ideas. So the topic sentences that you introduced in your introduction must return here in a different shape, possibly, but the ideas must still match them. You could also use a distinctly different tone in your written voice in your conclusion. So if you've been quite formal and strict throughout your essay, which is what we want to aim for, you could lighten up a little bit and become a little bit more personal with your reader in your conclusion. You might want to ask them some rhetorical questions. You might want to use a specific, say, first-person voice and speak as I and my opinions and those sort of things. And you might also look at, content-wise, something that's not quite in the essay. So you might want to end on a statement where you talked about how certain things that just didn't, implications from your conclusions or limitations of the essay. So had this essay been longer, it would have been interesting to explore this, or kind of thinking of ways forward from this point. How might your essay continue in other work? In addition, you might also make some suggestions to the reader in terms of what they, give them some agency to go off and change the world or view the world differently based on that. You could also mention the composers of the text that you've explored, so the writers or directors or whatever it might be that you're dealing with, but you don't necessarily have to reintroduce the text because you've already dealt with them throughout the word response. What you should not do is stretch out your introduction to your conclusion too far. Right? Don't labor the point. You've already presented your evidence. You're just trying to wrap things up here. And you don't need to summarize everything you've just said in your essay. Just be succinct and be effective in what you try to do in your conclusion. And obviously, you do not want to add any new ideas or new evidence here. You're concluding and you're summarizing, but you're certainly not bringing out new evidence in your conclusion. So since I'm connecting this essay to my previous one on introductions, I'm using the same question and the same thesis that I did for that video. So you've got the question up there with the highlighted keywords and the thesis that we used in the introduction, which was that an individual's expression is central to how he or she is viewed and received by others. So when you write your conclusion, you want to come back to that thesis. You want to still look at those elements, but you might want to mix it up so that the sentence still sounds differently. So here's a simple trick to do that. So what I've tried to do here to say the same thing but make the sentence sound differently is I've inverted the clauses of the sentence. So I've taken the beginning of the sentence, an individual's expression, and put that on the end, his or her expression. And then I've taken the end of that sentence, how he or she is viewed and received by others, how an individual is viewed and received by others, and put that at the start of the sentence. That alone makes a big difference. And then I've just made a slight tweak in terms of replacing the central verb of the two that holds the two clauses together, just to give the sentence a different ring. So that's a very easy way to repeat your thesis without sounding too repetitive. Now, if you also armed yourselves with great synonyms when you did your introduction and you're planning there, you might be able to tweak that as well further by adding some other synonyms instead of expression, or instead of viewed and received. You might have better words that you can insert there as well to make it sound even more different. So when it comes to the rest of your conclusion, if you like, the meat of the conclusion, the actual summative sentences, instead of repeating your topic sentences, because your topic sentences have been around, you've introduced them in your introduction, they've started off each of your paragraphs, you don't really want to bring them back again in your conclusion. So what you might want to do instead is try using a version of your concluding statements from each paragraph. Right, so if you followed the scaffold that I've given you before about how to structure your paragraphs, your body paragraphs should have a topic sentence and then a couple of evidence clusters where you try to prove your points, when you show how your ideas are relevant, and then you summarize those evidence clusters and your analysis in a concluding statement at the end of each paragraph. That concluding statement, or those concluding one from each paragraph, could very well come through into your conclusion here and become the core of the conclusion. And finally, the last component of your introduction should be some element of looking ahead. So give your readers kind of the next step in this saga. So what is the point of your essay? Have you tried to create a firebrand where you try to get them to start a revolution and go out and demonstrate? Are you wanting them to think about the topic further, saying, so then you might ask questions instead and saying, so if you were in the situation, what would you do? Or would you open the scope for future research for yourself in saying that if I had more space in my essay, then I would explore this other aspect, or kind of give them something to take away from your essay so that when they put the essay down, they're still thinking about it. And that obviously is pragmatic in terms of why we actually write essays. You're trying to do something with it if you're thinking of essays outside of your classroom environment, but also obviously in terms of an experience and how you influence a marker. If I've just read your essay and I'm about to give it a mark, if I'm still pondering your essay and kind of finding it interesting, then that is going to influence me in a positive way as well, because your essay clearly has touched me in some way and has engaged me, and that's obviously going to be something that's going to be helpful to you when it comes to the marking. So those are the core elements of the introduction. So quick review: you are looking at a restated version of your thesis, a summary of your concluding sentences from each of your body paragraphs, and then some sort of route forward for your readers. That's all there is to it. Don't overcomplicate it. Don't spend too long on this. Yes, that last statement might be the last thing that the reader takes away, but overall the conclusion is often something that, because as you've set up a good introduction and you've built a strong argument, then in the reader's mind, you've pretty much already done the work of the conclusion. You've already convinced me by the time I get to this stage of the reading. So really what you're doing here is you're sealing the deal. You don't need to spend a lot of time building an effective conclusion, because it is less efficient in the way, because you're not putting in evidence and analysis and showing that great depth of thinking that you've done in your deep analysis within your body paragraphs. All right, I hope this is useful, and if it's not, if you want me to tweak this or add further videos on conclusions, then please let me know in the comments, and we hope to hear back from you soon. Take care and best of luck.